This is Mommyhood Unscripted, a show about moms for moms.
Hey everyone, we are now at the final episode of a special 6-episode series called Mommyhood Unscripted, The Work Within. Now this is a passion project the amazing Carrie Lupoli and I have teamed up for. She is a certified nutritionist, a TedX speaker, award-winning behavior specialist, and educator in schools around the world who is dedicated to empowering women through sustainable health solutions. She's also the founder of Disruptive Nutrition and the host of her own podcast called Diet Disruptors. And now we are joined by Carrie, and we're going to talk about redefining the healthiest version of you. Such an important message that so many women, so many parents, so many people really, you wish and you hope that they could evaluate so they can show up as the best person they can for themselves.
I love that this is our 6th and kind of like final. I don't love that it's our final, but love that we're closing with this, because I really think when we talk about health, we have to sit down and actually define it in probably a very different way than we ever have before. And so I just think it gives it's a level of importance for us to sit down and talk about this today, because I don't think we ever unpack it in the way that I'm hoping we're going to do today.
Yeah, no, that's such a good point. And I love how you have just been presenting so many things and themes that I think we think about or we hear about, but we don't feel that we can achieve it. And it's all comes to confidence. It comes down to that. And really, being honest with yourself, right? We talk about that self-reflection. We have many episodes before. What do you think is like the first step?
Well, I think you just said confidence. That's when I ask women, what do they want and why do they want it? That's the number one thing that they say they want. They want to feel more confident. The problem is we have been kind of conditioned to believe that confidence comes from what we look like, a number on a scale, like the outside. And in all reality, what I learned in my own life and what I have seen in the thousands of women that I've worked with is that confidence does not come because you met a goal. Confidence comes when you know what you're doing is right, when you feel in control, and when you know who you are, what you want, and why you want it. And everything else starts to fall into place. I say this all the time. There's larger women that exude confidence, and there's plenty of smaller women that have very little confidence. So it isn't about what you look like or the size of your body. It comes from something within. And that's what I really want to unpack, because I believe that confidence equals health. I believe that self-awareness is health. I believe that self-consciousness is actually the disease. And when we can unpack our self-consciousness, when we can unpack what gets us really truly feeling like our self-worth is low and is not like when our kids were all born, when a baby is born, they are worthy just because they are here. And something has happened to us throughout our lives that has convinced us that just being ourselves is no longer enough. And when we can actually get back to that, that is going to bring us back to health. It's going to help us show up for ourselves differently. It's going to help us show up for our family differently. And it's going to allow us to actually serve our purpose. I believe that each one of us are here for a purpose, one uniquely curated just for us. And if we are the healthiest version of ourselves for as long as possible, we're going to be able to continue to serve that purpose for as long as possible. And so it's got to be bigger and deeper than what we have been conditioned to believe is the important stuff.
Yeah, that's on the surface level. And I love how this is the theme. It's that purpose over perfection. And and I think the hardest part, at least right now, speaking from, where I'm at right now, trying to rewire, right, how we were raised and even the times we were raised in. It's not even our parents, I'm not blaming our parents, but just the culture where we're coming from. And how do we implement those new techniques that we're speaking about for our kids, but at the same time, we're also trying to implement it in our own lives. And that's such a huge struggle sometimes, because like takes an extra second sometimes for my brain to go, nope, that's okay. Like, don't, for example, don't be ridiculing like, I had the dessert, or, know, no, that's okay. Like, I'm really trying to be more conscientious after I met you and watching what I say and how I say it. And also catching some family members even too. Like,
you can't unsee it. You can't unsee it.
Oh my gosh,
But it's also about the subconsciousness. And so we don't realize it. And this is why I love that you're just like, I'm starting to see it. You can't unsee when you start to actually recognize and are more self-aware. So the first thing I always talk about is self-awareness. Self-awareness is the first key, and hopefully throughout these episodes, we've been increasing our level of self-awareness. Just that in and of itself is going to allow us to start to think differently. If our thoughts and our beliefs dictate our actions, which we actually know is true, we cannot do something that we don't believe or that we don't think about first, even if it's unconscious. But our thoughts and our beliefs, they dictate our actions. And so if we want our actions to be different, if we want to show up differently, it's going to start with our thoughts and our beliefs. So that's why we have to start with that here and now. And when it comes to purpose, I also think about a why. Jamie Kern-Lima, who's the author of the book Worthy, an incredible book.
I feel like I've heard of that title before. Yeah,
I actually did a book study with about 1,200 women to unpack this book early in 2025. And she talks about how, we really truly were, each of us, born worthy. And then something happens along the way that feels that we have to prove our worth or that we have to earn it in some way. And we don't. But throughout our lives, we have been programmed in a certain way. Think about like a computer, and we program a computer. You think about even AI today, and AI continues to learn with every single piece of data that it's given. We are just like that. So with every little tiny piece of data, experience, belief, we have come to actually a place of truth about ourselves. I call it truthiness because it's not actually true. It just feels very true. And it's true because of our experiences.
Right.
And I mean, I know that my mom didn't mean to teach me this, but with my hair, I have absolutely crazy curly hair.
Which is gorgeous, and I would give anything for crazy curly hair like yours.
Yeah, well, it's funny, though, because it wasn't acceptable in my life for the first 40 years, and it was just everything we could do to tame it,
so it was all
to
about
control it.
Yeah.
Oh, my goodness, right?
Wow.
And I remember one time my mom was brushing out my hair, and I was in so much pain, and she just kept saying, beauty hurts, honey, beauty hurts. And so it was one piece of the programming, right? So we have to be aware that we've been programmed a certain way, and it doesn't necessarily mean it's true. But when we really get into this, and Jamie Kern-Lima has a whole chapter on this, and this is one of the first things I work on with women is, what do you want and why do you want it? Really, truly. Yeah. And if we can't think of why, again, I just want to be more confident. Okay, why? Great. But how is being a different size going to get you to that place?
Oh my gosh.
And I know that from experience because when I started implementing what I teach women with nutrition, how to fuel their bodies, balance their blood sugar, no longer counting calories, no longer tracking their food, not even dealing with like the whole macro world and entering your food in an app. It was totally freeing for a girl who had an eating disorder. When I did that, my body started changing very quickly. And I was just about 40. I was in better shape at 40 than I was as a Division I athlete.
Wow.
It was absolutely incredible. And I realized I did not have any more confidence. I still was that same broken girl that would get up on stage and talk to people as a national educational consultant and as an international speaker. I weighed myself before every single time I got on stage.
Oh my gosh.
And I was more obsessed about my body because I really felt like I was worthy because of what my body looked like. And I realized right then and there, I was going at this for all the wrong reasons.
It's so funny because you hear people, bring up this example too when it comes to finances. Like you've heard
win the lottery.
Or you've heard even celebrities talk about like, I just wanted to make more money. And then I got there and I was like, wait, I'm still not happy. And it's so funny that you brought up your example, and thank you. You're so open about sharing that. And that's like a whole other topic, right? With like eating disorders and things and products of, again, our culture and the past. I think about when I was getting ready to be a bride, right? And I look back at pictures of myself and I thought that I needed to lose more weight. And I was working out constantly, but not for the right reasons. And I was also, I was not sleeping because of the shift I was on. I was not eating healthy. I was like skipping meals, not because intentionally, just because of my schedule. I wasn't putting myself first, but when I look back, I'm like, I was so skinny, like too skinny. And even my husband was like, you're healthier now. You're working out. You're making time for sleep and for food. And I remember at postpartum, I was so upset. I gained all of this weight, with my daughter. And I for the first time ever, I had never been, 40, 50 pounds over. I've always been within a certain range. And my husband was like, why do you want to get back to that weight that you were before the wedding? And I know a lot of brides sometimes can, get like, skinny, right? And air quotations here, stress, everything.
Yeah.
And he said, but what's going to make you feel better? I'm like, well, because I could just put anything on and I'll just like not have to think about it and get all.
But you were thinking about it.
But I was, right.
And that's what I say all the time. When I'm like, when you were 40 pounds lighter, were you on a diet? Were you thinking and were you obsessing about your food and your body then? Yes. So I'm not saying I don't want women to get healthy and lean and strong.
Right.
It's got to be for the right reasons.
Right, exactly.
And it's got to be centered around health. Because I mean, you hear about people going through cancer treatments and they lose all sorts of weight. That's not healthy, right? So we got to get out of the weight loss and we got to get into health and understanding, what does the healthiest version of me do, say, think, and believe. This is a blueprint for our next steps. And I think this is something that continues to evolve, because I know when I do this with my clients and then we go back and revisit it about every 6 months, it changes and it evolves and we cross some things out and we add to it. So I think about a piece of paper, just divide it into quadrants. Do, say, think, and believe. And it's amazing how each perspective changes how you write it a little bit more, because our entire life we're doing, we're saying, we're thinking, and we're believing. And if we can actually get it out there on paper and define what does the healthiest version of me do, say, think, and believe, you will see something so much different than a number on a scale. But yet that is what we are socially conditioned to think about when it comes to health. And I say, if you didn't have a scale, how would you know that you are making progress? And that is such an important piece of this puzzle. I know that, like when if you hear about somebody that loses sense, like a sense of sight, for example, their hearing is much more pronounced. If we could lose the scale completely, it's amazing how much more aware we are of our body, of our emotions, of our needs, of our thoughts, and we can actually then shift towards healthier. But when our body, our mind, our soul is blinded by a number, because right, you can step on a scale and then it can ruin your day.
Oh, yeah.
If it's not where you want, if you think it should
and
be.
You're thinking about how much do I need to lose to get to where I think it should be.
For confidence and for reasons that are internal, right? So if we could get rid of the scale, we could start to see so many more levels and measures of progress. We become more confident, for sure. And when we look at what a healthiest version of me does, says, thinks, and believes, the healthiest version of me strength trains 4 times a week. And it's not because I need to weigh a certain amount. It's because I know, I'm 50 now, and I know that I can either continue on the path of most people where we end up with osteoporosis, we end up hunched over, and we end up dying of metabolic disease in our 70s, like 90% of people do. Or I can actually continue to build my strength and my bone density, continue to thrive during menopause, and be able to show up and kick a soccer ball with my great grandkids in my 80s and 90s. That's purpose over perfection. And if I'm showing up as the healthiest version of myself, and I'm doing my morning time, and I'm managing my time, all the things we've been talking about for the past 5+ episodes, we end up naturally becoming our optimal health, our optimal weight, and confident. But we just keep chasing the thing that society tells us to go after. And it's funny because 10, 20, 30, 40 years, we're not any happier. We're not any more confident, and we've been up and down on the scale. So the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. This is the wake-up call that I want women to be able to see and say, instead of the scale, let's measure what we believe are the true values of health. What do we do? What do we say? What do we think? And what do we believe?
Yeah, we don't want to be stuck in those situations and regret. And so often you see people when they do get sick, they wish they chose to do, again, like our last episode, they wish they used their time differently, and put their energy and poured it into other things, because there's certain things in this life we can't take with us,
we
right?
Can't. And think about tracking food on an app. People, I am one of the only nutritionists I know, unless I have trained nutritionists. I train a whole group of people to help their clients think differently. But if they're not doing that, very often, 99% of them are telling you to track your calories, track your food. And I think, how much time are you spending putting your food into an app? I haven't put my food into an app in over 10 years, and I just got my metabolic age tested, and I am 43. I identify as a
amazing.
43-year-old. I'm 50, but my metabolic age is 43, and I don't have any idea how many calories I eat, and I've never had to put a single calorie or macro into an app. So we're wasting time on the wrong things for the wrong reasons. And when we can actually divorce ourselves from the results and show up for ourselves for the reasons of true and total purpose, health, longevity, impact, service, it changes everything about how our body actually responds. It's incredible.
Yeah.
And the obsession.
Right. And it just seems, even just to hear you say, I have not tracked my foods in an app for 10 years, that sounds so liberating and freeing.
Here's the problem, though. Our brain is conditioned to what it's familiar with. And so one of the things that I have seen with women, especially when I see women in their 40s and 50s that have been dieting or chasing this elusive number on a scale for decades, that's what our brain is used to. And as a behavior specialist, I know that our brain will automatically go back to what it's familiar with. And so if we have spent decades obsessing, tracking our food, it sounds liberating, but when you actually learn how to do that, then you've got to actually dig into the things that you probably haven't really been thinking about because you've been spending so much time chasing something. And when you no longer have to chase it, you start to have to dig into, who am I? What do I want? Why do I want it? What is my purpose on this earth?
Right.
And right now, while you're raising your kids, your purpose is doing that. And right now, while my kids are in college and being independent, now I got to rethink that. And I've done a lot of work and research on something I call the purpose cycle. And I think it allows women to show up for the season of their life in a different way than I think they ever have before. Have you ever thought, what's my purpose?
Yeah, all the time. And I feel like it evolves too at different stages and seasons of my life.
Right. And then it's wait a minute, maybe that wasn't my purpose. Maybe this was.
Right.
When I was a national educational consultant, I was traveling around the country. I remember when I first started, I'm like, this is what I'm supposed to be doing. And then I started really tapping into health and wellness in a very different way. And then I ended up leaving my full-time job as a consultant and doing this full-time. And then I'm like, okay, well, I guess I was wrong. That wasn't my purpose. This is my purpose. And I've started to realize that as women especially, but humans in general, we go through this thing called a purpose cycle. And we are in our calling. It's like our assignment, and that can change throughout our life depending on what we are in our parenting stage, in our career stage. And throughout that time that we're in this calling, we're actually serving our purpose. We are. And we're establishing gifts, we're getting more skills and talents. And so we're in this calling, this assignment, and we're picking up more gifts and skills and talents.
We're evolving.
Yeah. And then we will hit some sort of disruptive event. It could be positive or it could be kind of negative. And that disruptive event might be something like, I remember when my kids started talking about calories when they were 5 and 6 years old. It could be the loss of a job. It could be the birth of a baby. It's something that changes significantly, and we often let it derail us. We often let it completely throw us off. And I will hear from clients that my mother died, or my kid was born, or I had a grandchild. And then that throws us off completely in terms of staying consistent with ourselves.
Right.
But what if we're really self-aware? That disruptive event actually can reinvent us.
Yes.
And then and then it's almost like our calling becomes sometimes like a square peg in a round hole. I know when you shifted your entire schedule, how you worked had to completely shift because of a disruptive event. And that reinvented you into a new cycle. And so one of the things that I've learned over the years of working with women is that we are serving our purpose right now, here. Our purpose is to serve others and to make an impact. But we will do it with a calling or an assignment, with more gifts, many, many, many times throughout our life. But there will always be a disruptive event that then changes the course of our direction.
Right.
And what I want and what I believe is that the more and more and more we can go through this purpose cycle, the more we're actually going to impact lives around us. And so I want to be the healthiest version of myself so I can go around that purpose cycle as many times as possible, because my biggest fear is that one day I'll die and God will be like, you did good. but I had so much more planned for you because you didn't show up as your healthiest self. And I want to stay alive until I'm at least 100 because how many times can I go around that purpose cycle if I do?
Right.
And I just think it's really a cool way for us to look at life and not like, what's my purpose? What's my purpose? But I'm serving it right now in the midst of it, in the chaos of little kids and working, there's a purpose that you're serving. And then there will be something that comes to disrupt it. You will be reinvented, and then there will be a new place for you to serve that purpose.
Yeah. It's so funny, talking about those events that happen in your life, and it's true. It's like, when those things happen, good or bad, what are you going to do with them, and how are you going to face them head on and let them, either control you, right, and then lose control of who you are and what you want, or you can literally harness it and take that energy and like you said, reinvent yourself. We're human beings. We're messy. We're constantly evolving. And I think of, the birth of my daughter. I've talked a lot about this on this podcast. Not that the birth of my son didn't change me, because that made me a mom. Yep. But the birth of my daughter completely opened up my eyes. I had a dream 3 months into my pregnancy with her and with my son. I didn't find out the gender for either.
Wow.
I knew I was having a boy. I had a dream, literally the doctor saying, it's a boy, coming, old school 1960s, you know. I think my parents were in there smoking cigarettes. I'm just kidding. But with my daughter, 2-3 months in, I'm like, this is a girl. I know it. I know it's a girl. I still didn't have any confirmation, obviously, until the day came, but I knew it in my heart. And I felt during that time in my pregnancy, it was just, it changed me. Oh my gosh, I'm having a daughter. What do I want to work on for myself that I would want to tell her, So that was so mind-changing. And then losing my mother-in-law was such a huge moment, just to see, her battle and her journey, and thinking about everything that she sacrificed and she gave, and then also how fleeting life is, It's what do we want to do on this earth while we are here, and how do we maximize our time so we can show up as the best version for ourselves and for our loved ones and for those who we want to make an impact on, you were just saying in that cycle.
Exactly. And that's where I think that reinvention is so important, but we get stuck in the disruptive event. We do. And this is why self-awareness is so important, is because when we are aware that there's this disruptive event happening right now, we could take a step back and be like, okay, this is a disruptive event. But almost as hard as some of them can be, you can almost treat it like, I can't wait to see what's on the other side.
Right.
And if we could actually take a step back like that, how much more could we get out of life when we are present in that disruptive event, regardless of how positive or negative it is, because it's almost like binge watching a Netflix show. What's going to happen next?
Right.
And then it just brings us to a whole new level of passion, wisdom, experience. But if we're not aware of it, it can bring us down. And in our last episode, we talked about the time funnel and how important time is. And we can go 5, 10, 20, 30 years. I have women that show up and they're like, I don't know where that time went. I don't know who I am anymore, because we've been walking around with almost these shields on, but they knew exactly what they weighed every single freaking day.
Yeah.
Every day.
And that didn't bring them the happiness when all was said and done.
But when we look at it, because the disruptive event will happen. And so when we can look at it and that we're going to be reinvented, I went through an eating disorder, infertility, a very, very chaotic and stressful adoption, multiple moves around the world that I was not necessarily ready for or prepared for. And all of these pieces of the puzzle made me and gave me the gifts, and it kept shifting my calling. And it allowed me to feel like, okay, wait, I'm not just scattered. I'm not doing this career and then this career. I'm actually supposed to be going through this. Right. And it just opens your eyes to a different purpose. So yeah, we're going to divorce ourselves from the weight and the number on the scale.
Yeah.
And then I want a bigger why. I want to be there for my great grandkids. I want to be able to impact others. But when we can then tap into the purpose cycle and recognize that disruptive events that happen in our life are here for part of our purpose, that just takes it to a whole nother deeper level.
Oh my gosh. That we need to capitalize and bold that statement. And we need to live in the uncomfortability of those disruptive events, because I think that, that also teaches us to also be resilient.
Yes.
And then, so the next ones that come along, well, we're going to be like, well, all right, well, we got through X, Y, and Z. So, well, this is going to be hard too. And not to say that this isn't going to stink,
but we can do hard things.
We can do it.
And think about how much better it's going to be when we look back on it. Thank God I had the experiences I had, because I wouldn't be doing this work with this generation of women if I hadn't. Right. And so my purpose was meaningful 20 years ago, but how much more meaningful is it now because of how many times I've been through that purpose cycle. But if we don't realize it, we're going to waste our life.
Right.
And that's, to me, the biggest tragedy.
Doing what you do right now and looking back 20 years ago, do you think that you would be like, what are you doing, Carrie? Like, no, you have to do X, Y, and Z.
I was very type A. I had everything planned out, but that God like threw that out the window when I knew as a teacher I was going to get pregnant on this month so that I could have a baby and capitalize on my summer maternity leave. And 5 years later, I still wasn't pregnant. So, I realized that it's a hard lesson for me to realize that things are not always going to be in my control, and that when I can kind of submit to the idea that there is a bigger purpose for my life, and I have to trust and have that faith, you just show up so differently. And I want to take care of this life container. This life container is the only one that I am being given, and I want it to be a power for good. So I am going to go to the gym. I am going to serve my body. I will also serve my soul, but I will serve my body more than I serve my soul.
And you say your health is the vehicle for your purpose. It is not a project to fix.
If we keep thinking it's a project to fix, then we're going to miss the actual ability for us to serve others, which is our purpose, to be impactful and to actually have a life of purpose. And we are perfectly made. We just have been programmed in a way that has made us believe otherwise. We just got to go back to that little baby that was born. Just like when your daughter and when your son were born, they were perfect. So were you.
Yeah.
And so were all of us. And we just have to go back and remember that.
And we're all worthy
100%.
of the great things this life has to offer us.
Without a doubt. Without a doubt.
I just feel like I went to church.
I was just going to say that. I feel like we were at church.
This has been so amazing in this whole 6-episode series, Mommyhood Unscripted, the work within. I mean, if that just doesn't wrap up the series and put a bow on it, I don't know what does.
Oh, I'm so glad.
So amazing, Carrie, and just the work that you're continuing to do. And how can we send people to follow you? You go on Instagram every morning.
I do. I go on Instagram Live every morning for morning time because it is the most important time for us to reset and realign our intentions with what we actually do. But CarrieLupoli.com is where all the different things that I can, you can tag me in or find me in. And I just really am passionate about women, but obviously everybody, but I believe that women and moms are the cog in the wheel of our whole families. And if we can figure it out, if we can put our oxygen masks on, we can show them how to do that too. And that's how we change our family tree. Not by giving them more money or more Disney trips.
Nope.
It just isn't.
Absolutely. You said it. You said it best. Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for being here. Remember, purpose over perfection. And we have, again, 6 episodes of this series that you can check out and you can go back and listen to, almost like as a nice little refresher, I would say, you know? And also, please make sure to share and pass this along too with any of your friends out there, your mom friends. It's so important.
Little mommy meetups to talk about it.
I love that idea.
That.
I think we should have you come to a mommy meetup.
That would be fun.
All right. Well, Carrie and I will always be planning for other things out there for you guys. So make sure to follow Carrie and make sure to follow this podcast. Thank you so much again for being here. Carrie, thank you so much.
Thank you.
For teaming up for this amazing series. And remember, if you like what you heard, you can scan that QR code. You can search Mommyhood Unscripted on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever else you get your podcasts. And far above all else, remember, mamas, you're doing great.